I'm Alpha Lance with Leaderboard, and this is an in-depth look at the history of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, from mod to Bluehole and everything you need to know in between. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, better known as PUBG, is a massive online multiplayer deathmatch that became available as a full release on December 20th, 2017 on Windows and Xbox One. PUBG is one of the most popular and most played video games in the world, and both of these statements were true before its release on December 20th. Since the early access on Steam in March of 2017, PUBG gathered a huge following, quickly becoming the most played game on the platform. It sold over 24 million copies before the end of the year and is regularly watched by millions of people on Twitch, YouTube, and Mixer. The Arma mod. Despite appearances, PUBG was not an overnight success, nor was it the first Battle Royale game. PlayerUnknown's first version arrived in 2013 as a mod of the game DayZ, which itself is a mod of the game Arma 2, which is not a mod though it is a sequel. And isn't a sequel just a mod? What's the difference between a mod and an indie game with similar elements? When you look at PUBG's existence and the way it came to be, that question becomes a riddle. At what point does a mod just become its own video game? Answer: when it starts making money. More on that later. As PUBG was first built upon DayZ and Arma, it's important to have a sense of what those games were to understand where PUBG came from. So let's briefly take a look at both games. Arma is a hyper-realistic military tactical shooter series on PC. It's not as scary a term as it might sound at first. The final version of PUBG was built on a mod of Arma 2 called DayZ. DayZ was an independently created mod on Arma 2 that brought a separate multiplayer zombie survival mode, in which players scavenge for supplies while killing zombies and other players. DayZ received major download success, big praise from major gaming outlets, and eventually an official release on its own. DayZ's popularity led to an online competition called Survivor Games, with a Z, featuring a number of Twitch and YouTube streamers fighting to be the last man standing. Inspired by these streams, PlayerUnknown's mod of DayZ took the Survivor Games concept and turned it into a mod of its own, on top of the scavenging and the tactical military shooting elements. If that combination sounds similar to PUBG, well, that's because it is. The 2017 game PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has actually been around since 2013, as Arma 2, DayZ, Battle Royale. When Arma 3 came out, the mod was updated and soon became known as PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale. We'll refer to this game going forward as Arma Royale. Get to know PUBG. But first, how did Battle Royale, a mod of a mod of a mod, become PUBG, the biggest game in the world? To answer that, we should take a moment to learn about PlayerUnknown himself, aka Brendan Green, the PUH in PUBG. As recently as 2014, Brendan Green was living at home on welfare. According to an interview with Bloomberg last year, Green would have to explain to social workers that he wasn't wasting his time making free video games. He said, "They were telling me to look for jobs or I'll be cut off. I kind of ignored them." Now, Green is valued at over $4 million. Quote, "It really felt like the universe was looking out for me." Born in Ireland, Brendan Green spent the first 3 decades of his life working on a few different jobs. He spent time as a photographer, graphic designer, and web designer. Around 2012, he began to dabble in the PC mod community. Green has insisted in interviews that money and fame were never his goals. He simply wanted to create the game he wanted to play. He's spoken several times about how much help he received from the supportive modding community. Just as Green had his start with mods, he wanted to enable others to mod his game so that he can, quote, find the next PlayerUnknown. From his beginnings as an unknown modder living on welfare to a multi-millionaire with a studio dedicated to realizing his dream, the story of PUBG's evolution is also the story of Brendan Green's evolution as a developer, and how it's impossible to separate PUBG from PlayerUnknown. H1Z1 development. An important development from Arma Royale to PUBG is Green's role in H1Z1. Noticing the buzz around Arma Royale, Sony Online decided they wanted to include a Battle Royale option for a shooter they were developing. In 2015, Sony contacted Green and hired him as a consultant for the Battle Royale mode called H1Z1 King of the Kill. By 2016, Sony would split the development of the game into 2 separate games, determining that the Battle Royale mode should be its own game. In 2017, King of the Kill was retitled H1Z1, and the original H1Z1 was renamed to simply Just Survive. H1Z1 offered a faster-paced and more conventionally accessible shooter game compared to the hyper-realistic military tactical shooting in Arma Royale. We could spend an entire video just comparing the individual merits of Arma Royale, H1Z1, and PUBG, But let's not get too sidetracked. All 3 games from Brendan Greene have their supporters, and Greene himself has said that he's happy that there are 3 distinct experiences of Battle Royale. For military simulation, you go Armor Royale. For arcadey shooting, it's H1Z1. But the important takeaway here is that Greene says he views PUBG as the ideal balance between the two. Around the time he was working for Sony, Greene received an offer from a South Korean developer and publisher of MMO and mobile games called Bluehole. After Greene's consultancy period with Sony Online ended, he moved to South Korea and joined Bluehole as a creative director to create PUBG with their support. In 2016, Greene and Bluehole began developing PUBG in earnest. According to Greene, this was the first time a Korean game studio had brought aboard a foreigner for a creative director role. But he says his relationship with Bluehole's management is strong, and his team works with minimal oversight. As the game's early access betas became a smash hit on Steam, Bluehole gave Greene his own dedicated offshoot studio to develop the game, launching the PUBG Corporation in September of 2017 and opening an office in the US with plans for future offices in Europe and Japan. The final version. PUBG, according to Greene, is the final version of the Battle Royale genre he's been developing since his first Armor Royale mod. Though that doesn't mean the game is finished. Greene intends for the game's development to be ongoing and open to the public. The major difference between the current final version and the previous mods is the free fall from the airplane. Greene says this addition essentially gives PUBG 3 distinct subgames. The first game is the parachuting and landing. Each time you play, the plane travels over the map in a random direction, so the first game is to choose the spot to jump from the plane, and to parachute to a place where you think you'll find an advantage. Strategically, you may prefer to try to parachute to as far away from the plane's trajectory as you can, to avoid conflict and find equipment in a spot where you won't find other players. Although if you do this, the downside is you may be pretty far outside of the first circle and may struggle to get within the circle in time or in a way that maintains your previous advantage. Or you may prefer to try to land along the route into a more crowded area and initiate conflict sooner, to more quickly get yourself into the second game. The second game is the looting game, which involves trying to find the best equipment and position as soon as possible before someone else beats you to it. Weapons and items are dropped at random in different buildings on the map. So if you're thinking you'd like to try getting onto a roof and sniping people who come by, there's no way to guarantee you'll find a sniper rifle or the scope that allows you to zoom in the area that you've decided to scavenge. Or if you land in an empty spot, there's no way to know if your happy little homestead won't be on the complete opposite side of the map from where you need to be. Like the randomized items on the map, the idea is to keep you off balance and to keep the gameplay varied. The weapons are similar to other deathmatch gun games with a variety of pistols, assault rifles, shotguns, snipers, grenades, health items, and so on that can be carried in backpacks and different loadouts. Also, there are a few different kinds of vehicles you can find and drive, and some are better than others for certain situations. Besides helping you locate better positioning, vehicles can also be used for murder, just like in real life. Finally, the third game is the online multiplayer shooter game, and really the menu system for your weapons and items and your ability to quickly load and properly use them in the right situations is essentially a fourth game. Aiming could arguably be the fifth game, learning the locations, situations, and telltale signs of other players would be the sixth game, but all these other sub-games fit within the overall online multiplayer shooter game, so we'll stick to what Brendan Greene himself said and confirm PUBG is 3 games, and the third one, hunting and surviving, is the core gameplay. That said, PUBG includes a few really important innovations that are uncommon in other popular online shooters. One is the inclusion of the option for third-person view similar to Grand Theft Auto, with the ability to toggle between third-person and first-person when playing on the third-person server. A patch in August of 2017 included an option for only playing with other people that are also in the first-person view, but we'll explain that later on when we get to the game's modes. Either way, the controls for looking around, for positioning yourself, are more robust than other shooters. Instead of only being able to run, jump, and crouch, you'll also be able to turn your head while you're moving to scan the area. You're also able to lean, which is helpful to peek around corners or to avoid enemy fire in a shootout. You have an unlimited sprint, and you're able to get into a prone position and crawl on your stomach. These mechanics, as well as the map and compass, are not new innovations if you're familiar with Armor Royale or other sophisticated technical shooters on PC. But for broader audiences, these are largely unique within the online shooter genre. Another unique aspect of PUBG is what it chooses not to include. There are no character classes, no set roles, or any type of EXP system that affects gameplay. You do earn in-game currency, but it's used entirely for cosmetic changes. Everyone begins the game equally, every time. So let's talk about how these 3 main games work together to create the distinctly unique experience that is PUBG. A game that is an intoxicating mix of luck and skill. The game very intentionally wants you to improvise and change plans on the fly. In addition to the random airplane trajectory and randomized item locations, the game also shakes things up during the deathmatch with random red zones and airdrops. The red zones are the opposite of safe zones, but work in the same way. A red circle will appear on the map where bombs will be dropped for a brief period, in which case you'll need to find cover inside buildings or get out. In contrast, airdrops are when a plane flies overhead to drop a crate of loot randomly on the map. Both of these are there to further encourage players to keep moving, to avoid camping within the safe zone, and to allow for different strategies on how to kill and survive. Maps. Right now, PUBG has 2 available maps on PC and 1 on Xbox One. The primary map, called Erangel, is a war-torn Eastern European island. A desert map, Miramar, launched on PC in January and is expected on Xbox One sometime in 2018. Both maps are massive in scope, measuring approximately 8 by 8 kilometers or 5 by 5 miles. The reasoning, according to Green, is that he found most multiplayer shooters too repetitive, so rather than having a dozen small maps that are easy to memorize, he wanted to create vastly larger maps with more random aspects that could not be easily memorized and random item placement. One playthrough, you might find the school to be a hotbed of conflict and best avoided. On others, it may be outside of the plane's initial trajectory and largely ignored, becoming a great source for looting. Still, you generally expect to see more than 1 or 2 maps in an online shooter. Green acknowledged that the size of the maps in PUBG has been one of the challenges of working with Unreal Engine 4, which has helped speed up some aspects of development time, although the engine was not designed with maps this size in mind. Going forward, Green wants future maps to be more realized and realistic. He said, "The next map should feel a lot realer, a lot more together. And it's our plan in maybe a year's time to go back to Erangel and sort of remake the map and give it that identity of this kind of Russian or Crimean island." Modes. At the moment, PUBG offers 4 different ways to play: solo, duo, squad, and one-man squad. Solo means you're matched with 100 people, all of whom are in it for themselves. Duo means it's you and a buddy, and squad means they can put you in a group up to 4. You can set your settings to fill your squad up with random people, or you can play with friends. For duo or squad, only one player needs to survive to the end of the game for everyone to win the chicken dinner. In one-man squad, you load into a squad game but without any players by your side to go against players who are in groups up to 4. It sounds challenging, but some people have actually done it to great success. Brendan Green has discussed additional modes and custom games that will come in the future. Both he and Bluehole envision PUBG as a game that will continue to evolve over time with regular updates. Green has mentioned the possibility of including a campaign mode with cooperative play at some point, though he said it probably wouldn't be a full story with lore. A potential PUBG campaign would be less like Destiny and more like Watch Dogs. As we mentioned earlier, you're also able to choose your perspective. The menu presents the options of third-person perspective or first-person perspective, located as TPP or FPP respectively. In third-person perspective though, you still have the ability to switch between first-person and third-person view. The first-person view option is more for the competitive crowd, as limited first-person perspective means you can't see around corners, ledges, or behind you with your third-person camera. The limited view obviously changes things quite a bit if all players are equally without this extra advantage. Speaking of advantages, players on better machines like the Xbox One X, or if you have a high-end PC, benefit from the high-end graphic performance compared to the standard Xbox One or lower-end PC counterparts. So a better frame rate or draw distance can be a huge advantage in a game where you're hunting other people, usually from a considerable distance. It's not expressly clear if there is a matchmaking system or grouping players by experience or skill level. The game doesn't offer, for example, a direct way to choose advanced or beginner levels of play. In this way, the game can be quite frustrating. It can feel like you're basically just playing the first 2 games, parachuting and collecting items, only to get sniped from behind or ambushed immediately as you're finding your first items, or lose a firefight you initiated because the other player is just better at leaning and strafing while shooting. In any case, the game has already revolutionized online multiplayer in such a fundamental way that it's easy to imagine similar Battle Royale modes becoming the new standard for online multiplayer. Many now standard modes in online multiplayer first started as mods. Capture the Flag is a standard mode in multiplayer shooters, but it started as a mod in Quake back in 1996. Soon it will seem strange when a new AAA title is announced that doesn't include Battle Royale. Or maybe it will end up being a gaming fad like Rock Band or Wii Sports, where a huge hit for a few years then fades away once the concept loses novelty. That seems like an unlikely progression, but hey, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Did you predict PlayerUnknown joining a Korean studio to develop PUBG as a full game? If so, please comment below with lottery numbers, and thank you very much. Once again, I'm Alpha Lance, and thanks for watching PUBG Beta vs. Now. What do you think is the future of Battle Royale games? Is PUBG the king of the hill of king of the kill games? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to become part of the notification squad, and if you like getting more from your games, subscribe to the Leaderboard, your home for video game facts.